Let's imagine a scenario. A man walks into a convenience store on a boring Tuesday afternoon. He intends to buy a pack of cigarettes, but his eyes catch the lottery counter. An impulse strikes. He decides to buy a ticket. He picks a random sequence of numbers. His wife's birthday, plus the license plate of the taxi that just cut him off outside. That evening, the balls drop in the machine. And just like that, he wins a $100 million jackpot. His life changes in a split second. From a bored office worker, he transforms into a millionaire. Immediately, the press swarms him, like moths to a flame. Reporters shove microphones in his face and ask, "What is your secret to success?" The man, now convinced he is a financial genius chosen by God, begins to write a book. The title is The Millionaire Mindset: How to Pick Winning Numbers. In this book, he meticulously analyzes the spiritual significance of birthdays, the angle of the sun when he saw that license plate, and he advises you to wear the exact same shade of blue shirt he wore that day. You read the book like it is gospel. You do exactly as told. You wear the blue shirt, you pick your wife's birthday, you wait for a taxi to pass by, and then you lose. You lose money. You blame yourself. You think, maybe I wasn't sincere enough, or maybe the shirt was the wrong shade of blue. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly how 90% of the self-help industry operates. Welcome to the world of selling the lottery numbers after the draw. We often look at books on wealth or happiness as treasure maps, but through the lens of behavioral psychology and cold, hard statistics, most of them are simply the diaries of a lucky individual, packaged under the glossy wrapper of success science. And the scariest part isn't the deception. The scariest part is the sincerity. We need to be fair here. Not every self-help author is a cold-blooded manipulator sitting in the shadows counting cash. The reality is much more brutal. They actually believe what they write. This is a massive psychological trap that scientists call the self-serving bias. When a person achieves massive success, their brain often tricks them into believing that the result came from innate talent, not luck. They look back at their past and stitch random events into a logical process. They say they succeeded because they woke up at 4 a.m., because they took cold showers, because they smiled in the mirror. They sincerely believe it. But they forget the massive, unreplicable variables. The time they were born, their family's financial safety net, or simply a lucky break in the stock market. On the exact day they launched their startup. They sell you their habits, but they cannot sell you their luck. Copying a billionaire's behavior to get rich is like wearing glasses to get smart like a physics professor. You are copying the shell, but you cannot copy the brain inside. The danger lies in the fact that their sincerity is contagious. When someone speaks false things with an ironclad belief that they are true, they create a powerful gravitational pull. You are not buying a mathematical formula. You are buying a faith. And to reinforce that faith, this industry uses an ultimate weapon: survivorship bias. Let's go back in time to World War II. When the Allied bombers returned to base after battles, they were often riddled with bullet holes on the wings and the tail. The military generals looked at the data and gave an order: reinforce the armor on the wings and tail, because that is where the planes get shot the most. But a mathematician named Abraham Wald stopped them. He said, "No, you must reinforce the areas that have no bullet holes. That is the engines and the cockpit." The generals were confused. "Why reinforce the places that aren't getting hit?" Wald replied coldly, "Wrong. The planes hit in the engines and the cockpit. They died. They never came back for you to count the holes. The ones that returned were the lucky ones that only took damage in the non-critical parts." Self-help books are exactly like those returning planes. If we invited everyone who applied the same formula, the same persistence as the best-selling authors, but failed to come up on stage, what would happen? The stage would collapse, because the number of failures would outnumber the successes, 10,000 to 1. This is the cemetery of silent evidence. The failures don't get to write books. Their voices are buried at the bottom of the ocean, along with the planes shot in the engine. Therefore, when you walk into a bookstore, you only see the survivors. You mistake success for a general rule, when in reality, it is often a rare exception. The publishing industry doesn't sell you the full picture. They only sell you the luckiest statistical anomalies. And by only displaying the winners, they plant a toxic belief in your head. If he can do it, I can do it. If I can't do it, the fault lies with me. This is where the art of mass psychological manipulation reveals itself. To se la cure, they must first convince you that you are sick. Modern self-help is incredibly good at turning normality into a disease. You feel satisfied with an average salary and a quiet life. They tell you that you lack ambition and are wasting your potential. You like to lie down and rest on a Sunday. They say you lack iron discipline. They paint a picture of a superhuman, then place that mirror in front of you. Compared to that image, your normal life suddenly looks pathetic, broken, and full of errors. They create a phantom pain, an unnecessary insecurity, just to immediately hand you a $15 book as the only antidote. But the story doesn't end there. If they were just empty words, why do we still believe? Why do we feel such a rush of excitement when we pick up a self-help book? Because this industry doesn't just pick your pocket. It infiltrates your brain, flooding your system with a powerful spiritual narcotic. We need to talk about this disguised painkiller in the next part. Let's talk about your brain. The industry might set the trap, but your own brain is the one walking into it. Why does an intelligent, educated person believe that a 200-page paperback can change their destiny? The scam starts with a deliberate confusion. They mix up hard skills with abstract mindsets. If you buy a manual on how to repair a motorcycle engine, that is an excellent investment. Why? Because an engine is a physical machine. The piston always moves in a fixed cycle. Spark and fuel together will definitely create energy. It follows the laws of physics. Input, output, done. It is precise, repeatable, and emotionless. Similarly, if you buy a book on Python programming, you get immediate binary feedback. You write the code. If it is the warrant, the computer gives you an error. You fix it. Lear. But the self-help industry has pulled off a spectacular bet. They apply that mechanical thinking to the chaos of the human soul. They sell you formulas like 3 steps to happiness or 5 principles of leadership. Exactly like they sell a recipe for baking a cake. But your mind is not flour and eggs. Your life is not a computer code with clear Human psychology is a chaotic system, full of contradictions, and subject to billions of changing environmental variables. You cannot assemble confidence like you assemble a wooden cabinet. When you try to apply a rigid process to a chaotic reality, the result is not success. It is disillusionment. You try to screw the bolt named positive thinking into the grief of losing a loved one, and you strip the threads. You try to debug your anxiety like it is a software glitch. But the error keeps coming back because anxiety is a feature, not a bug. When the formula fails, you don't blame the formula. You believe that you are a bad mechanic. You think you are broken. So why do we still buy them? Why does that moment of holding a new book feel so good, even better than reading it? This is a neurological glitch called reward prediction error. In the late 1990s, neuroscientists discovered something fascinating about dopamine. Your brain is not designed to reward you for the prize itself. It is designed to reward you for the anticipation of the prize. When you walk into a bookstore and see a cover that says, "Become your best self," your brain runs a simulation. It paints a vivid, high-resolution picture of a future where you are rich, fit, and admired. That simulation is perfect. In your head, there is no pain, no failure, only glory. The moment you pull out your wallet to pay, your brain releases a massive spike of dopamine. It records that action, the act of buying as a victory. You feel a rush of excitement, a sense of relief. It feels like you have already changed your life, even though in reality, you haven't done a single thing. This creates a state called action faking. It is not just about books. We see this everywhere. It is the person who spends 3 hours watching motivational videos, feeling their adrenaline rise, but never steps foot in a gym to lift a single weight. It is the student who buys 10 different color-coded highlighters and spends a week designing the perfect study schedule, but never actually opens the textbook to study. It is the entrepreneur who prints business cards and designs a logo before they even have a product to sell. We mistake motion for action. We mistake preparation for execution. Self-help becomes a form of intellectual simulation. It gives you the high of achievement without the sweat of labor. You become dependent on the promise, because the promise is always cleaner and more beautiful than the messy reality of doing the work. However, we need to be fair. Saying self-help is completely useless is too one-sided. It does have an effect, and that effect is powerful. It is the effect of a high-dose anesthetic. Imagine you have a deep internal void. That void represents your insecurity. It represents your anxiety about the future or the trauma from your past that you haven't dealt with. It is a psychological fracture that keeps you up at night. The self-help book is a clean, white, scented bandage that you place over that fracture. Immediately, the pain subsides. You no longer see the ugly reality of your situation. Soothing phrases like, "The universe has a plan for you," or "Everything happens for a reason," act as a local numbing agent. You feel peace. You feel understood. You sleep better that night. That is real value. In a world full of pressure, that temporary relief is not cheap. But the deadly problem is this. That bandage has no antiseptic. It only covers the surface. Beneath that beautiful layer of words, the fracture is not healing. It is silently decaying. The issue of skill deficiency, the issue of broken relationships, is getting worse in the dark. This is the dirty bandage effect. While you are busy reading about the law of attraction, your actual career is stagnant because you are not learning new technical skills. While you are busy reading about love languages, your marriage is falling apart because you are avoiding the difficult, painful conversations that need to happen. When the anesthetic wears off usually, after a few days or weeks the anxiety returns. And it returns more intensely because the problems have grown bigger in the shadows. And when the pain returns, what do? You don't take off the bandage to face the reality, because that would be excruciating. Instead, you run to the bookstore and buy a new bandage. A thicker one, a more expensive one. You switch from this author to that author. You jump from stoicism to minimalism, then to buy. Each book is a temporary fix to help you survive the bad days, but they simultaneously strip away your ability to heal yourself. You become weaker in the face of reality. You lose the ability to tolerate negative emotions, which are actually necessary signals telling you that your life needs real structural change, not just a change in mindset. Gradually, reading is no longer about learning. It becomes a ritual of reassurance. We become dependent users, relying on hollow advice to maintain a fake sense of stability. We are not solving problems. We are just managing the symptoms of our own mediocrity. And once we understand this biological mechanism, we are forced to ask a crueler question. If we know it is just a painkiller, why do we keep taking it? Is it possible that, deep down, we don't actually want to be cured? Is it possible that we prefer the beautiful lie over the ugly truth? But don't answer yet. Because the truth is darker than you think. In the next part, we need to talk about the person who is truly responsible for this mess. It isn't the author. It isn't the publisher. It's the accomplice looking back at you in the mirror. It is time to look in the mirror. In the first two parts, we blamed the industry for selling luck as science. We blamed our brains for being addicted to dopamine. But if we stop there, we are missing the most important piece of the puzzle. We are missing the only constant factor in every transaction. You. We need to answer a brutal question. If you have bought 10 books on productivity, and you are still procrastinating, why did you buy the 11th one? If the first 10 didn't work, logic dictates that the method is flawed. But you didn't stop. You bought another one. Why? The harsh truth is this. We are not victims of a grand illusion. We are voluntary accomplices. We don't buy self-help books because we want to solve our problems. We buy them because we want to hide from them. This triggers the first mechanism. Identity, shopping. Psychologists call this symbolic self-completion. When you feel incomplete in a certain area of your life, you try to acquire symbols that represent the person you want to be. When you walk into a bookstore and pick up a book titled The CEO Mindset, you're not just buying paper and ink. You are buying a costume for $20. You get to role-play as a disciplined, successful executive. It is not just about books. We see this everywhere. You buy a $2,000 camera setup, and for a moment, you feel like a photographer, even though you haven't taken a single meaningful picture. You buy expensive gym gear, the shoes, the belt, the straps, and you feel like an athlete, even though you haven't stepped inside the squat rack. You buy a subscription to an online masterclass, and you feel like a student, even though you never watch past the first lesson. We treat these products like magical talismans. We think that by simply owning the tool, we possess the virtue. But buying a book on marathon training does not make you a runner. It just makes you a customer with a thinner wallet. But there is a darker reason why we keep spending. It is the fear of reality. We use learning as a shield against doing. This brings us to the most dangerous form of laziness: productive procrastination. This is the most deceptive trap of all because it looks and feels like work. Imagine you want to start a business. That is terrifying. You could go bankrupt. You could be humiliated. You could fail. The risk is real and visceral. So, what do? You don't launch the business. Instead, you buy 3 books on startup strategy. You spend a month reading them. You highlight the pages. You take notes. This feels like work. Your brain tells you, I am being productive. I am preparing. But in reality, you are stalling. Reading about the lion is safe. Fighting the lion is dangerous. As long as you are reading, you remain in the safe womb of theory. You cannot fail while you are reading. You cannot be rejected while you are reading. We pay the industry a monthly subscription fee to keep us in this safe zone, to delay the moment we have to face the cold, hard world. We are not buying a solution. We are buying a delay. And today, this problem is magnified by a force that didn't exist 20 years ago. The algorithm of inadequacy. Before we even walk into a bookstore, we are bombarded by social media. Open your phone, you see a 20-year-old crypto millionaire in Dubai. You see a fitness influencer with six-pack ABS eating a perfect organic breakfast. You see your friends getting promoted, getting married, traveling the world. These platforms are designed to show you a highlight reel of everyone else's life, while you are stuck with the behind-the-scenes footage of your own messy reality. This creates a self-rejection loop. The entire premise of the self-help industry is built on a single, unspoken assumption. You are broken, and you need to be fixed. Every time you buy a book that promises to make you better, faster, or happier, you are implicitly agreeing with the statement that your current self is worse, slower, and sadder. This creates a parasitic relationship. The industry feeds on your self-loathing. They hold up an impossible standard. You look at that standard, and then you look at yourself. The gap between your real self and that ideal self widens. You feel inadequate. You feel ashamed. And what do you do to fix that shame? You go back to the source of the shame to buy the cure. It is a perfect cycle. The more self-help you consume, the more you are reminded of what you lack. The more you are reminded of what you lack, the more desperate you become for a solution. You are like a thirsty man drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you get, and the deeper you sink. This constant consumption has a devastating side effect: the death of intuition. We have forgotten how to solve problems on our own. If we feel sad, we look for a book on happiness. If we are unmotivated, we look for a TED Talk. If we have a conflict with a spouse, we look for a 5-step communication template. We have outsourced our wisdom to gurus. We have become children who are afraid to walk without holding an adult's hand. We are terrified of trusting our own judgment because we have been told for years that our judgment is flawed. We have traded our intuition for a checklist, and in doing so, we have atrophied our mental muscles. We have become soft, dependent, and easily manipulated. So, where does this leave us? We are standing in a room full of books that we haven't read, chasing a version of ourselves that doesn't exist, hiding from the pain that is necessary for our growth. We have analyzed the industry. We have analyzed the brain. We have analyzed the heart. The diagnosis is complete. The patient is critical. Now, we must operate. It is time to stop reading and start sweating. It is time to stop preparing and start fighting. It is time to burn the boats. In the final part, we will discuss the only self-help advice that actually works: the philosophy of the real. Welcome to the end of the line. We have dissected the industry that sells you luck as science. We have exposed the dopamine loops that keep you addicted. We have looked in the mirror and admitted our own complicity. We have stripped away the illusions. Now, only one thing remains: the cold, naked truth. And the truth is this: there is no map. The fundamental lie of every self-help book is the promise that someone else has already figured it out for you. They hand you a map. They say, follow this path, step 1, step 2, step 3, and you will find the treasure. But they forget to tell you the most important rule of geography: the map is not the territory. The map you hold in your hands was drawn by a billionaire in 1995 or a tech mogul in 2010. But the territory of life is constantly shifting. The economic landscape has changed. The social dynamics have changed. The technology has changed. The path that led them to the treasure is now overgrown with weeds. The bridge they crossed has collapsed. If you follow their map blindly, you will not find gold. You will walk straight off a cliff. You are looking for certainty in a universe that is governed by chaos. And the more you read, the more you are trying to force a chaotic world to fit into a neat, linear narrative. It will never fit. So, what is the alternative? If we burn the maps, how do we navigate the jungle? We stop looking for a map, and we start looking for a compass. And believe it or not, you already have one. It is built into your nervous system. That compass is your pain. For years, self-help books have told you to run away from negative emotions. They tell you to think positive, to vibrate at a higher frequency, to ignore the bad vibes. This is the worst advice you can possibly follow. Negative emotions are not your enemies. They are data. They are feedback loops from reality. If you feel lonely, that is not a defect. That is a signal that you need to build deeper social connections. If you feel bored, that is a signal that you are stagnating and need a challenge. If you feel envious of your friend's success, That is not a sin. That is a signal revealing what you truly desire, but are too afraid to pursue. When you numb these feelings with a positive thinking book, you are smashing your compass with a hammer. You are turning off the check engine light in your car and pretending the engine is fine. The solution is not to read more about how to be happy. The solution is to stare directly into the abyss of your dissatisfaction and ask, what is this pain trying to teach me? This leads us to the protocol of the real. If you want to break the parasitic loop, you must execute a radical shift in your behavior. You must switch from just-in-case learning to just-in-time learning. Most of us are hoarders of information. We learn just in case we might need it someday. We read about marketing just in case we start a business. We read about nutrition just in case we decide to start a diet next year. This is mental obesity. You are consuming calories of information that you cannot burn. Just-in-time learning is the opposite. You do not allow yourself to learn until you have a problem that requires a solution. You don't read a book on sales until you have a product and a phone in your hand, and you are terrified to make the first call. You don't watch a tutorial on video editing until you have raw footage sitting on your timeline waiting to be cut. You let the problem drive the learning, not the other way around. This ensures that every piece of information you consume is immediately converted into action. There is no gap for the dopamine to trick you. There is no time for action faking. And finally, we must address the fear. The reason we cling to books is that we are terrified of the unknown. We want a guarantee before we start. We want to know that if we work hard, we will succeed. But the cold truth is, there are no guarantees. You can do everything right and still fail. You can wake up at 5 a.m., journal every day, and still go bankrupt. You can be the kindest person in the world and still get your heart broken. Self-help tries to sell you a world where effort equals reward. Realism teaches you that effort only increases your probability, and that is okay. Embracing this uncertainty is true freedom. When you accept that there is no safety net, you stop waiting for permission. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You stop waiting for the perfect strategy. You realize that stumbling through the dark forest on your own 2 feet is infinitely better than sitting safely in a cage, reading about the forest. So, here is your final instruction. Look at the shelf of books behind you. Look at the saved videos in your playlist. They have served their purpose. They gave you hope when you were down. They gave you a vocabulary to describe your struggles. But now, they have become crutches, and you cannot run a marathon on crutches. It is time to put them down. Do not buy another book until you have executed the advice from the last one. Do not watch another motivational video until you have done something that makes you sweat. Do not look for another hero to save you. The hero is dead. The guru is a salesman. The map is a lie. There is only you, the jungle, and the step you are about to take. It will be scary. It will be messy. It will be painful. But for the first time in your life, it will be real. Close the book, open the door. Good luck.